It started on a warm evening in Paris. After the negotiations ended, the city fell into a peaceful silence. But something in my chest was far away. I remember the calm as it was at that moment. The road where Hamzat had stood yesterday, the door to my hotel room, a sharp suit and dark eyes burning with unspoken thoughts. "Aunt Aisha, it looks like you need it," he said. "A drink?" His voice was smooth as silk. I smiled, hiding my nerves. Hamat, my stepson, the son of the man who took me from Nigeria to live. I was living in this cold, remote place, and yet his blood coursed through his veins. There was something about him, something different that kept questioning me. At first, I convinced myself of it. I was just being silly, but the feelings kept growing. I thought about her smile, the way her lips curled when I saw her, the moments I caught myself looking at her across the room. I looked at him like a man, not a son. I knew it was dangerous, but still. That night, after a few minutes, the air between us darkened. His eyes locked with mine. And in that moment, I knew we were about to cross a line. Neither of us could say, "Let's go." "Walk," he said. His voice was low, and it was dangerous outside. The night was cool. The city lights twinkled like stars. But I felt a warmth inside me, like a fire rising, threatening to consume me completely. It was no longer a matter of choice. It felt like fate. When he reached for me, I didn't pull my hand away. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but I wanted it. I wanted him. And that night, in the silence, in the shadow of the city, something changed between us. We walked around London in the silent streets. The world was asleep, but my heart was racing in my chest. It was like the beat of a drum at a village festival. His hand was warm and strong. His touch sent sparks through my body. "Aunt Aisha," he said again. His voice was soft but full. "Please subscribe to my channel to support me." "Why do you always call me Hamzat, like I'm your stepson? Don't I look like that from the outside?" she asked. His question hung in the air. I couldn't answer. The boy who called me aunt was now a man who hurt my heart. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't. I just stood there, trying to regulate my breathing as the cold air filled my lungs. His face was only inches away from mine. I could smell his cologne. I could feel his warmth. For a long moment, we both knew what was happening, but we didn't dare break the moment. Finally, his lips were on mine. At first, it was gentle, as if he was waiting for me, hesitant but determined. I didn't stop him. As his lips slid gently over mine, the desire inside me grew. It was wrong. I knew I was married to her father, but some uncontrolled force inside me couldn't resist. There was a war going on inside me. My body and my heart were prisoners of the moment, while my logic reminded me of the consequences. I kissed him. My fingers gripped his shirt. And finally, when we pulled back, we were panting. "What now?" he whispered. But I didn't know. I wanted to run away, but I pulled him back to me. I knew the moment was wrong, but I didn't want it to end. The night passed in a blur. In the morning, everything was different. I woke up with a heaviness. Hamzat was next to me. His arm had fallen lazily over me as I slept. I remained motionless. The silence weighed on me every second. My husband was miles away in Abuja, immersed in negotiations. My heart sank just thinking about him. He was a good man, but I was in the arms of his son. "I have to finish this," I told myself, but Hamzat moved slightly. He gripped me tighter. He touched his lips to my shoulder. "Auntie Aisha," he said in a voice thick with sleep, "please subscribe to my channel to support me." I closed my eyes. My heart was beating fast. His hand was gently tracing circles on my face. This was no longer a simple mistake, nor was this just a passing thing. I recoiled as it became real. I felt like I was in a dream that didn't want to wake up slowly. My thoughts were racing. Emotions were everywhere. I didn't know what to do. I forced myself to keep my distance, but we were both in the depths of temptation. Outside a quiet house in a city far away, the world around us had become unable to control what was unfolding before us. I slowly got out of bed, my bare feet touching the cold floor. His face was relaxed as he slept. I leaned towards him. He was at peace. But this was the man I had betrayed my husband to. The weight of that moment gripped me. When he woke up, everything would be remembered again. With trembling hands, I tried to get dressed, as if just moving would save me from the storm inside me. After I was dressed, I looked at Hamzat. He was awake now. He was watching me with deep, knowing eyes. His expression was soft, but almost too soft. "Aisha, you can't just walk away from this," he said. His voice held hope mixed with joy. There was something in it that I couldn't quite make sense of. "I know," I whispered, my voice shaking. "But I have to do this." I nodded, a knot in my throat. This was a mistake. He was sitting on the bed. The bed creaked slightly under his weight. His eyes were on me. But there was something dangerous in those eyes. It was possessive. "Do you think it was just a mistake?" he asked. I couldn't answer him, because deep down I knew it wasn't just a mistake, but even so, I didn't have the strength to face my heart. I was split in two. Each part of me was being pulled in a different direction. "I can't do this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As I headed for the door, I stopped at the sound of her voice coming from behind me. "Aunt Aisha, don't you love me?" The words were filled with quiet desperation. It hit me harder than anything else. My hand froze on the door handle. My heart was pounding. At that moment, I realized for the first time, maybe it wasn't just about something. Maybe this wasn't just a fleeting moment of passion. There was something deeper between us. Something I couldn't name, but I felt its presence. But I couldn't look at him. I opened the door. I stepped into the cold hallway, the weight of my heart on my shoulders. The corridor was narrow and silent. Each step took me farther away. But his voice still echoed in my mind. His touch, his words, everything about him. On the one hand, my marriage, my family, my honor. On the other hand, the fear of losing him. When I reached the elevator, the reflection looked at me through the polished metal. I looked tired and exhausted. My hair was disheveled. My eyes were red from sleepless nights and crying. I let myself cry. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside. I stared at the button for what seemed like an eternity. The elevator was taking me somewhere I didn't want to go. It stopped at the ground floor. I stepped into the coolness of the silent lobby. The man at the reception was saying something to me, but I couldn't hear him. My mind was still there. With Hamzat. His words, his touch, his gaze. But I had to remember what was at stake. My marriage, my family, my honor. When I reached my room, I collapsed on the bed. I put my face on the pillow. The world seemed to blur outside. For a moment, I just let the tears flow, but now I knew it wasn't just about me. The choices I had made, the lies I had told. For the first time, I felt so deeply how fragile the foundation on which I had built my life was. As the tears flowed, I realized that something inside me was beginning to change. No matter how strong the temptation, no matter how convincing my emotions, I was the only one who could take control. I was still in control of my life. I may have been driven by something dangerous, but I wasn't a victim. I had power. I could choose to make a change. That night, I decided I was going to rebuild my life. I picked up the phone and called my husband. When I heard his voice, the warmth and reassurance on the other end of the line was as warm and reassuring as ever. But this time, the weight of my guilt was deeper. "There's something I need to talk to you about," I said, my voice trembling, the words stuck in my throat. "It's important." There was silence on the other side, but I knew she sensed the seriousness in my voice. "Of course, Aisha. What happened?" he asked. "I have to tell you the truth," I said. "Something you didn't know, and I deeply regret it." Tears welled up in my eyes again, but this time I didn't try to hide them. I was ready to face them. It wasn't easy to speak the truth. Betrayal was not something I was proud of, but it was the first step to healing. It scared me to open the wounds of my mistakes. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep running. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. When I hung up the line, I felt a deep sense of relief. I had overcome the hardest part. The truth is that I had experienced a moment of weakness, but now I was strong enough to overcome that weakness. My advice: women sometimes realize that their hearts lead them down paths they never expected. But remember, sin is real, and the heart can deceive you. Whatever happens, think of the consequences of trying to claim something that does not belong to you. A moment of weakness or a misstep does not define who you are. You always have the power to choose what is right. As painful as the truth may be for your loved ones, it is the only way to heal. Let not guilt or shame define you. You always have the chance to start again. You deserve love, respect, and peace, and these can only be achieved through honesty. Remember, facing the hardest truths leads you to the right path. If you agree with me and you liked my story, please subscribe and make me happy.